The morning rush at Sunrise Diner had begun like any other Tuesday. The small bell above the door jingled constantly as business people hurried in for their coffee, and locals settled into their usual booths. Steam rose from the kitchen window, carrying the smell of bacon and pancakes through the cramped space. In the middle of this controlled chaos moved Lily, a waitress whose dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun. She'd been working at the diner for nearly 5 years now, and her routine had a familiar rhythm. Coffee pot in one hand, order pad in the other, she glided between tables with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "Morning, Mr. Henderson," she said, topping off an older man's mug without being asked. "The usual today?" The elderly gentleman nodded, barely looking up from his newspaper. "Thanks, kid. You're the only one who remembers how I like my eggs." Lily smiled but was already moving on to the next table, her mind half on her customers and half on the melody that had been stuck in her head all morning. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, third movement. The complicated fingerwork had been giving her trouble last night. Few people at the diner knew about Lily's other life. They saw only what was visible: a hard-working waitress in her early 30s, friendly but not overly chatty, who remembered their orders and never mixed up the checks. They didn't see what happened after she hung up her apron each night. "Order up," called out the cook, sliding 2 plates of pancakes onto the counter. Lily balanced the plates along her arm with expert precision. Her fingers were strong, her movements deft as she weaved through the narrow spaces between chairs. These same fingers, hours later, would stretch across piano keys, coaxing out complex melodies that filled her tiny apartment. "Can I get you folks anything else?" she asked a young couple setting down their breakfast. The woman shook her head, already reaching for the syrup, but the man pointed to Lily's hands. "That's an unusual callus pattern," he remarked. "Almost like a guitarist, but not quite." Lily tucked her hands into her apron pockets, a reflexive movement. "Just from carrying trays," she replied with a practiced smile. She'd gotten good at deflecting these rare moments of notice. It wasn't that she was ashamed of her music, quite the opposite. But explaining meant questions, and questions meant telling the whole story, and she'd long ago decided some stories were better left untold. The truth was complicated. Lily had once been a promising classical pianist, accepted to the prestigious Eastman School of Music on a full scholarship. Her childhood had been filled with recitals, competitions, and teachers who used words like prodigy and exceptional. Music had been her entire world, the piano an extension of herself. Then life happened. Her father's sudden illness, the mounting medical bills, her mother's struggle to keep their small house. The scholarship covered tuition but not living expenses. Dropping out hadn't felt like a choice at the time. It was simply what had to be done. Family came first. She'd moved back home, picked up waitressing to help with the bills, and told herself it would be temporary. That was 12 years ago. The diner emptied out around 10:30 a.m., giving Lily a chance to refill salt shakers and wipe down menus. Her manager, Doug, a heavy-set man with perpetually rolled-up sleeves, emerged from the back office. "Good crowd today," he commented, counting receipts. "You heading straight home after your shift?" Lily nodded, wiping her hands on a towel. "Got some things to practice," she said vaguely. Doug raised an eyebrow. "You take classes or something on your days off? Ever see you around town much?" "Just some personal projects," she replied, the same answer she always gave. Doug was a good boss, fair with scheduling, understanding when she needed time off. But he wasn't someone she shared her private life with. What she didn't say was that she had a lesson to prepare for. 2 years ago, Lily had started teaching piano to a handful of students, mostly children from the neighborhood. The extra money helped, but more importantly, it kept her connected to music in a way that felt meaningful. She charged less than most teachers in the area, making lessons accessible to families who couldn't afford the rates at formal music schools. The lunch crowd began trickling in, and Lily fell back into her routine. Take orders, deliver food, clear tables, repeat. The work wasn't challenging, but it was honest. On good days, she found a certain satisfaction in it, in being good at something straightforward, in the simple human connections formed over coffee refills and friendly conversation. By the time her shift ended at 3 p.m., her feet ached and her shoulders felt tight. She changed out of her uniform in the small employee bathroom, splashing water on her face and letting down her hair. The woman who looked back from the mirror seemed different somehow, less the efficient waitress and more the musician she still was at heart. The walk to her apartment took 15 minutes, through a neighborhood that had seen better days but was still safe enough. Lily lived in a converted brownstone, her one-bedroom apartment on the second floor. The building was old, with creaky floors and radiators that clanked in winter, but the rent was reasonable, and the walls were thick enough that her playing didn't disturb the neighbors too much. As she climbed the stairs, she could already feel the day's tension beginning to shift. This transition, from diner to home, from waitress to pianist, was the boundary between her two worlds. Her apartment was small but neat, dominated by the upright piano against the living room wall. It wasn't a fancy instrument, a used Yamaha she'd purchased 7 years ago with every penny of her savings, but it was well maintained, and had a warm tone that suited the classical pieces she preferred. Lily set down her bag, kicked off her shoes, and without even stopping to change clothes or eat, sat down at the piano bench. Her fingers found the keys automatically, beginning with scales to warm up. C major, G major, D major, up and down, the familiar patterns loosening her hands after hours of carrying plates and coffee pots. The physical relief was immediate. Playing after a long shift was like finally scratching an itch that had been just out of reach all day. The melodies that had been playing in her head could finally come out through her fingers. After 20 minutes of exercises, she opened her music to Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. This piece had been challenging her for weeks. The dramatic shifts in tempo, the technically demanding runs. She'd been a better pianist in her youth, before years of waitressing had taken a toll on her practice time. But what she'd lost in technical precision, she'd gained in emotional depth. Life had given her experiences to pour into the music. Time disappeared when Lily played. The small apartment, the aches in her body, the mental list of bills to pay. All of it faded into the background as she lost herself in the composition. 1 hour passed, then 2. The afternoon light shifted across the room as she repeated difficult passages, working through the problems measure by measure. A knock at her door finally broke her concentration. Lily blinked, returning to reality with some reluctance. Her first student of the evening, a 10-year-old boy who showed real promise despite his resistance to practicing scales. Later, after her last student had left, Lily made a simple dinner and ate it at her small kitchen table, flipping through a music magazine. An article about an upcoming piano competition caught her eye. The entry deadline was next month. Open to non-professional pianists over 30. The grand prize included a substantial cash award and a guest performance with the City Symphony. She'd seen similar competitions before and always found reasons not to enter. Too busy, not prepared enough, too far removed from the formal music world. But something about this one made her pause. Maybe it was the specific wording, for pianists whose life circumstances have led them away from professional careers in music. It felt like it was written for people exactly like her. Lily set down her fork, considering what entering would mean. More practice time, somehow carved out of her already full schedule. The vulnerability of performing publicly again after so many years. The possibility of rejection, or worse, the possibility of success and what that might mean for the careful balance of her two worlds. Her phone buzzed with a text from Doug, asking if she could cover an extra shift tomorrow. The practical concerns of everyday life intruding once again. Lily looked back at the magazine, then at her piano waiting silently across the room. She'd need to give Doug an answer, but first she wanted to play just a little longer. The dishes could wait. Tomorrow's extra shift could wait. For now there was just the music, the one constant that had remained with her through everything. She returned to the piano bench, flexed her waitress strong hands, and began to play once more. Not Chopin this time, but something of her own composition. A piece that had been forming in her mind during quiet moments at the diner, between coffee refills and breakfast orders. A piece about patience, about waiting, about two lives lived simultaneously. And as the notes filled her small apartment, Lily didn't know that in just 3 days, these separate worlds would collide in ways she could never have imagined. 3 days later, Lily found herself in the middle of a particularly hectic Friday morning shift. The diner was packed, with customers lined up by the door waiting for tables. The cook was shouting orders faster than usual, and one of the other waitresses had called in sick, leaving them short-staffed on their busiest day. "Lily, can you take table 12? And 14 needs their check," Doug called out. frantically making coffee while the regular cashier handled a complicated takeout order. Sweat beaded on Lily's forehead as she balanced 4 plates of eggs and hash browns along her arm. She hadn't gotten much sleep the night before, staying up late to practice a particularly difficult passage of the Chopin piece. Her fingers felt stiff and clumsy this morning, better suited for piano keys than juggling coffee mugs. "I've got it," she replied, somehow managing to serve all 4 plates without dropping anything. Years of practice had made her good at this balancing act, both literally and figuratively. As she refilled water glasses at table 7, she noticed a well-dressed man sitting alone in her section. He wasn't a regular, and something about him stood out. Maybe it was his perfectly tailored suit or the way he studied the simple diner menu as if it were a complex document. He kept checking his watch and looking nervously toward the door. "Ready to order, sir?" Lily asked, pulling out her notepad. The man glanced up, distracted. "Just coffee for now. I'm waiting for someone." His accent was subtle but unmistakably British. Lily nodded and moved on to her next table. For the next 20 minutes she watched from the corner of her eye as the man made several phone calls, each one appearing to make him more anxious. Eventually he waved her over again. "I'm terribly sorry to bother you," he said, "but would you happen to know if there's a music store nearby, one that might sell sheet music?" The question caught Lily off guard. "There's Henderson's on 5th Street, she replied. "They have a pretty good selection. About a 10-minute walk from here." The man's face fell. "I'm afraid I don't have 10 minutes to spare. I'm the event coordinator for the Westmore Hotel across the street," he explained, gesturing out the window to the gleaming high-rise hotel visible just opposite the diner. "We're hosting a charity gala tonight, and our pianist has just called in with food poisoning." Absolutely dreadful timing. Lily felt a strange flutter in her chest like a premonition. "That's unfortunate," she said carefully. "Indeed. I've been calling every pianist in my contact list, but it's too short notice. Everyone's booked." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "The gala starts in 6 hours, and I need both a pianist and sheet music for the event. It's a disaster." Before Lily could stop herself, the words tumbled out. "What kind of music do you need?" The man looked up at her with new interest. "Classical, mostly. Some Chopin, Debussy, Bach. Background music for the cocktail hour and dinner. Nothing too complicated." He paused, studying her face. "Do you know someone who could help?" Lily hesitated. This was the moment where she should smile politely, say no, and move on to the next table. Keep her 2 worlds separate just as she always had. But something made her linger. "I might," she said slowly. "What time do you need this pianist?" "The guests arrive at 6. We'd need someone from 6 until about 10, with breaks, of course. It pays quite well." He stopped mid-sentence as Doug called out Lily's name. "I'm sorry, I'm keeping you from your work." "Let me think about it," Lily said, already backing away toward the kitchen. "I'll be back in a minute." For the next hour, as she took orders and cleared tables, her mind raced. Playing at a fancy hotel gala was not something she'd ever considered. Her performing days were far behind her, or so she'd thought. The practical concerns were immediate. She'd have to ask Doug for the evening off on short notice. She'd need something appropriate to wear. She hadn't performed in public in over a decade. But underneath those concerns was something else, a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. During her break, she found the British man still at his table, now surrounded by papers and frantically typing on his laptop. "I might know someone who could help," Lily said, standing beside his table. "Me?" The man looked up, confusion crossing his face, then understanding. "You play piano?" Lily nodded. "I studied at Eastman before I had to leave. I still play every day." He seemed skeptical, which she couldn't blame him for. She hardly looked the part of a classical pianist in her diner uniform, with a coffee stain on her sleeve and her hair coming loose from its practical bun. "Look," she said, pulling out her phone. "I have recordings." She scrolled through her files and found a video she'd made last month, practicing the 3rd movement of a Beethoven sonata. She hit play and handed him the phone. His expression changed as he listened, eyebrows rising. After 30 seconds, he looked up at her with new respect. "This is you? Playing this?" Lily nodded, feeling oddly vulnerable. Few people had heard her play in recent years aside from her students and their parents. "This is quite good," he said, clearly reassessing her. "I'm Thomas, by the way. Thomas Whitfield." He extended his hand. "Lily Chen," she replied, shaking it firmly. "Well, Lily Chen, would you be interested in saving our gala tonight? I can offer $300 for the 4 hours." It was more money than she'd make in 2 days at the diner. "I'd need to get the night off," she said, glancing toward Doug, who was watching their interaction with curiosity. "I can be very persuasive." Thomas smiled, already standing up. "Let me speak with your manager." To Lily's surprise, Doug agreed almost immediately when Thomas explained the situation. "You never told me you were some kind of piano genius," Doug said to her afterward, looking impressed and slightly hurt that he hadn't known. "Not a genius," Lily corrected. "Just someone who used to play a lot." "Well, you'd better get going," Doug said. "You'll need time to get ready. Consider it a paid evening off. We'll manage here." 5 hours later, Lily stood in the service entrance of the Westmore Hotel, feeling distinctly out of place. She'd rushed home to shower and change, digging through her closet for anything appropriate for such an event. The best she could find was a simple black dress she'd worn to a cousin's wedding 2 years ago. It was plain but elegant enough, paired with her only decent pair of heels. Thomas met her at the door, looking relieved. "Oh, thank goodness you're here. Come, I'll show you to the grand ballroom." Lily followed him through the hotel's gleaming corridors, past uniformed staff preparing for the evening. Everything about the Westmore spoke of luxury, from the marble floors to the crystal chandeliers. It was a world away from the Sunrise Diner, though physically just across the street. The ballroom took her breath away. High ceilings with ornate molding, floor-to-ceiling windows draped with silk curtains, and in the corner, a gleaming black grand piano that made her heart skip. It was a Steinway, probably worth more than she'd earn in 5 years at the diner. "You can warm up now if you'd like," Thomas said, gesturing to the piano. "Guests will start arriving in about 40 minutes. Left alone, Lily approached the instrument almost reverently. She sat on the bench, adjusted its height, and placed her fingers on the keys. The action was different from her upright at home, more responsive with a lighter touch. She began with a simple scale, then a chord progression, feeling out the instrument's personality. By the time she launched into a gentle Debussy piece, she'd forgotten where she was, lost in the pure joy of playing such a magnificent piano. It was only when she heard applause that she realized she wasn't alone anymore. A small group of hotel staff had paused in their preparations to listen. Among them was a young woman in chef's whites who called out, "That was beautiful." Lily felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you," she said softly, unused to an audience. As the first guests began to arrive, women in evening gowns and men in tuxedos, Lily settled into playing the kind of unobtrusive background music the event required. She kept her head down, focusing on the keys, trying not to feel intimidated by the crowd that gradually filled the room. She recognized a few faces from television, a famous news anchor, a retired basketball player turned commentator, the governor's wife. These were people who frequented concert halls and probably knew good music when they heard it. The thought made her nervous, but once she began playing in earnest, the nervousness faded. The piano had always been her true voice, more expressive than words could ever be. Tonight, after years of playing only for herself and her students, she was finally speaking aloud again. She didn't notice at first when the background chatter in the room began to dim. It was only when she finished a particularly moving Chopin nocturne that she realized the room had grown unusually quiet. She looked up to find dozens of people standing near the piano, cocktails in hand, watching her with appreciation. An older gentleman in a crisp tuxedo approached. "Excuse me, miss. Would you by any chance know Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor?" Lily nodded. It was a dramatic, technically challenging piece, not typical background music. "Would you play it? It was my late wife's favorite." She hesitated only briefly before nodding again. As she began the powerful opening chords, she knew this was no longer background music. The room grew completely silent as she played, her fingers flying across the keys in the furious passages, then growing gentle in the lyrical middle section. When she finished, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Someone called out another request, then another. Without fully realizing how it happened, Lily's role transformed from background pianist to featured performer, with guests gathering around the piano instead of mingling across the ballroom. Thomas appeared at her side during a brief pause, looking both surprised and delighted. "I had no idea," he whispered. "You're drawing quite a crowd. The charity director is thrilled. People are donating more than expected tonight." As Lily turned back to the piano, She caught sight of her reflection in its polished surface. She barely recognized herself, poised, confident, transformed. For the first time in 12 years, she was a pianist first and a waitress second. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a tiny voice whispered that perhaps she didn't have to choose between her two worlds after all. The gala ended just after 10 o'clock. Lily's fingers ached in a way they hadn't in years. A good ache. The kind that came from playing with passion rather than just precision. As the last guests filtered out of the ballroom, she remained at the piano, gently closing the lid over the keys with a reverence that felt almost like saying goodbye to a friend. That was... Thomas approached, seemingly at a loss for words. Well, that was not what I expected when I hired a last-minute replacement from a diner. Lily smiled, suddenly self-conscious now that the music had stopped. I hope it was okay. I know I started playing louder pieces than typical background music. Okay? Thomas laughed. The director of the Children's Hospital Foundation said it was their most successful fundraiser yet. People were literally writing larger checks because of your playing. He handed her an envelope. This is your payment, and I've added a bonus. Plus, several guests left their business cards. They're asking about you. Lily took the envelope, feeling oddly disconnected from the moment as if she were watching it happen to someone else. Thank you for the opportunity, she said simply. No, thank you. And, well, I should tell you something. Thomas glanced around before continuing. There was a man here tonight, Gregory Winters. He's the music director at the Symphony Hall. I saw him recording part of your performance on his phone. Lily froze. Recording me? Why? Thomas shrugged. I don't know him personally, but he seemed quite moved by your playing. Just thought you should know. As Lily walked home that night, she'd refused Thomas's offer to call her a taxi. The cool evening air helped clear her mind. The weight of the envelope in her purse felt significant, not just because of the money it contained, but because of what it represented. Payment for her music, not her coffee-pouring abilities. She was so lost in thought that she almost walked past her own apartment building. Inside, she kicked off her uncomfortable shoes and immediately checked her phone, which she'd left at home. 5 missed calls from her mother, which wasn't unusual. Mom always worried when she couldn't reach Lily right away. It was the other notifications that caught her attention. 17 new friend requests on social media from people she didn't know. Dozens of notifications. And a message from a college friend she hadn't spoken to in years that simply read, "Is this you?" With a link. Heart-pounding, Lily clicked the link. It led to a video posted on a social media page belonging to Gregory Winters. The caption read, "From serving tables to serving soul, watch this waitress outplay most concert pianists I know." Discovered tonight at the Westmore Charity Gala. The video showed her playing the Rachmaninoff piece, completely absorbed in the music, unaware of being recorded. It already had over 15,000 views despite being posted just 2 hours ago. Lily sank onto her couch, phone clutched in suddenly trembling hands. The comments were scrolling in real time. Who is she? That technique is flawless. Why is a pianist like this working as a waitress? This is what raw talent looks like. She quickly turned off her phone, unable to process what was happening. Sleep was impossible that night. She lay awake, alternating between exhilaration and panic. By morning, she had convinced herself that it would blow over quickly. The internet had a short attention span, after all. She was wrong. When Lily arrived at the diner for her regular Saturday morning shift, she knew immediately that something had changed. Conversations hushed as she entered. Doug emerged from the kitchen, tablet in hand. "You're famous," he said, turning the screen toward her. The video now had over 200,000 views. Several news websites had picked up the story, with headlines like, "Mystery waitress pianist takes internet by storm" and "From diner to virtuoso." Viral video sparks classical music debate. "I don't understand," Lily whispered. "It's just me playing piano." "Not according to these comments," Doug said, scrolling through them. "Apparently you're some kind of prodigy. And look, people are trying to figure out which diner you work at." Someone recognized our uniforms. As if on cue, the bell above the door jingled and a woman with a microphone entered, followed by a man carrying a camera. "Excuse me," she called out. "We're looking for the waitress pianist from the viral video." Lily instinctively stepped behind the counter, heart racing. Doug moved to intercept the reporter. "We're not doing interviews," he said firmly. This is a place of business, but that was just the beginning. Throughout her shift, customers kept recognizing her, asking for photos or autographs. Some just stared and whispered. By lunchtime, 3 more news crews had attempted to enter the diner, and Doug had put a no media sign on the door. When her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications, Lily turned it off completely. She felt like she was caught in a whirlwind, unable to find solid ground. The simple life she had carefully built was suddenly very complicated. "You should go home," Doug told her after the lunch rush. "This circus isn't going to die down today. Take the weekend. Let things settle." Grateful, Lily slipped out the back door to avoid the small crowd that had gathered out front. She took a circuitous route home, paranoid about being followed. Once safely inside her apartment, she turned on her phone just long enough to see that the video had now been viewed millions of times. There were messages from talent agents, recording companies, and morning TV shows. Her childhood piano teacher had written a long, emotional email about how proud she was. Most surprising was an official message from the Symphony Hall. Gregory Winters himself was inviting her to meet with him about a potential opportunity. Overwhelmed, Lily turned her phone off again and sat at her piano. For the first time in years, she couldn't bring herself to play. The instrument that had always been her refuge now felt like the center of a storm. A knock at her door made her jump. Cautiously, she approached and looked through the peephole. It was her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. "Lily, dear, are you all right?" the woman asked when Lily opened the door. "There are reporters in the building lobby asking questions about you. The super is trying to send them away." "Reporters? Here?" Lily felt her chest tighten. "How did they find out where I live?" Mrs. Patterson shook her head. "Someone must have told them. That nice young man who delivers groceries, perhaps? He was showing everyone a video on his phone this morning." Lily thanked her neighbor and closed the door, leaning against it. Her private world was collapsing around her. The separation she had maintained for so long between her 2 lives was evaporating. Later that evening, after declining 7 interview requests slipped under her door, Lily finally called her mother. "I've been trying to reach you for days," her mother exclaimed. "Everyone back home has seen the video. Mrs. Kim from church called to say she saw you on the morning news." "I'm sorry, Mom, it's been crazy," Lily sighed, curling up on her window seat. "I don't know what to do. I never wanted this kind of attention." There was a pause before her mother spoke again, her voice gentler. "But isn't this what you used to dream of? People recognizing your talent?" "That was a lifetime ago," Lily replied. "Before Dad got sick, before I had to leave school. I've made peace with how things turned out. Have you?" Her mother's question hung in the air. "You kept playing all these years, taught students, practiced every day. That doesn't sound like someone who's made peace with giving up their dream." The words hit home in a way Lily wasn't prepared for. Had she really made peace with it? Or had she just been waiting, practicing in solitude, teaching others, keeping the flame alive without fully acknowledging it? The next morning, Sunday, Lily woke to the sound of her phone ringing. She'd finally turned it back on, unable to remain disconnected any longer. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Is this Lily Chen, the pianist?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, it's me," Lily confirmed, bracing herself for another interview request. "This is Vivian Taylor, producer of Good Morning America. We'd like to invite you to perform live on our show tomorrow. We'll fly you to New York today. All expenses paid." Lily's first instinct was to refuse, to say she wasn't interested in fame, that she just wanted her quiet life back. But before she could speak, Vivian continued. "We've done some research on your background. You were at Eastman on scholarship, left due to family circumstances. What happened to you is a story that needs to be told, about talent that persists despite setbacks, about the everyday people with extraordinary gifts." Something in the woman's words resonated with Lily. Perhaps there was value in her story, not just for her but for others who had set aside their dreams due to life's unexpected turns. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Vivian replied. "But we'll need to know by noon. This is a rare opportunity, Ms. Chen." After hanging up, Lily sat at her piano again. This time her fingers found the keys naturally, playing a gentle melody she'd composed years ago during her father's illness. The music had always helped her think. The choice before her wasn't simple. Say yes and step fully into a spotlight she'd never sought. Say no, and possibly regret turning away from a door that had unexpectedly opened. As the final notes of her composition faded, Lily reached for her phone again. Whatever she decided, she knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be quite the same again. Lily did call Vivian back, but not with the answer the producer expected. Instead of agreeing to fly to New York immediately, she negotiated. She would do the interview, but via satellite from her local TV station. She would play one piece, but it would be her choice. And most importantly, she needed 3 days to prepare. 3 days? Vivian had sounded disappointed. The story is hot right now. We should strike while people are interested. I understand, Lily had replied, surprising herself with her newfound confidence. But I haven't performed professionally in over a decade. I need time to practice to be at my best. What she didn't say was that she also needed time to process what was happening, to make decisions that weren't rushed by the chaos around her. Reluctantly, Vivian agreed. The segment would air Thursday morning. Now, standing outside the Symphony Hall on Monday afternoon, Lily took a deep breath before pulling open the heavy door. She had decided to meet with Gregory Winters before making any other decisions. His invitation had been the one that felt most meaningful, not because of potential fame, but because of what the symphony represented, the world of classical music she had reluctantly left behind. The lobby was quiet, with just a few staff members moving about. A young woman at the reception desk looked up as Lily approached. "I'm here to see Mr. Winters," Lily said. "I'm Lily Chen." Recognition flashed across the receptionist's face. "Oh yes, he's expecting you. Please follow me." She was led through corridors lined with photographs of famous musicians and past performances. The building smelled of polish and history, stirring memories of concerts Lily had attended as a music student. Dreaming of someday performing on such a prestigious stage, Gregory Winters was not what she expected. Rather than the imposing figure she had imagined, he was a slender man in his 60s with kind eyes and a casual sweater, despite his formal position. "Ms. Chen," he greeted her, standing from behind his cluttered desk. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't," Lily admitted as she took a seat across from him. "I owe you an apology," he said immediately. "I should have asked permission before posting that video. In my excitement, I didn't consider the impact it would have on your life." His directness caught her off guard. "Why did you record me in the first place?" Winters leaned back in his chair, considering the question. "I've been in the music world for over 40 years. I've heard thousands of pianists, from students to world-renowned virtuosos. What you have is rare. Not just technical skill, plenty of people have that, but something more important, the ability to make people feel." He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before turning it toward her. "These are some of the comments on the video." Lily leaned forward, reading. "I haven't cried listening to Rachmaninoff since I heard it at my daughter's funeral. Thank you. I gave up piano years ago because my teacher said I'd never be good enough. This woman makes me want to try again. My autistic son never sits still for more than a minute." He watched this whole video twice, completely focused. Tears pricked at Lily's eyes as she read comment after comment, each describing how her playing had affected someone personally. This was something she hadn't considered, that her music could reach beyond the moment, touching people she would never meet. "This is why I recorded you," Winters said gently. "This is why I shared it. Music this moving deserves to be heard." Lily handed back the phone, taking a moment to collect herself. "What exactly did you want to discuss with me, Mr. Winters?" "Two things," he replied. "First, the symphony is hosting a special concert next month, Hidden Talents. The concept is to feature extraordinary musicians who took unconventional paths. We'd like you to be our headline performer." Lily's heart raced at the thought. A real concert with a real audience who came specifically to hear music, not background melodies at a gala or a television appearance, but a legitimate performance. "And the second thing?" she asked. "We offer a fellowship program for promising musicians who need support. It includes a stipend, mentorship, and access to our practice facilities. It's typically for younger students, but exceptions can be made." The implication was clear. A path back into the world of professional music, if she wanted it. "I'll need to think about it," Lily said, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "Of course," Winters nodded, "but there's one more thing you should see before you go." He led her from his office through more corridors and finally onto the stage of the main concert hall. It was empty now. rows of seats stretching into the darkness beyond the stage lights. In the center stood a magnificent concert grand piano. "Would you play something?" Winters asked. "Just for yourself, to feel what it's like. No recording, no audience." Lily hesitated only briefly before sitting at the bench. The moment her fingers touched the keys, playing the opening notes of Chopin's Ballad No. 1, she felt it. The perfect acoustics of the hall carrying each note into the space with a clarity her apartment could never provide. It was like speaking in a whisper and being heard perfectly by everyone. She played for 10 minutes, forgetting Winters was there, forgetting everything except the music and the extraordinary feeling of playing in a space designed for sound to flourish. When she finally stopped, the last note seemed to linger in the air like a question. "Think about my offer," Winters said quietly. "You belong here." On Tuesday morning, Lily returned to the diner for her regular shift. Doug had called the day before, saying the media frenzy had died down enough to make working possible. Still, she wore a cap and kept her head down as she entered through the back door. To her surprise, a small cheer went up from the kitchen staff when they saw her. "There she is," called the fry cook, a gruff man who rarely spoke more than necessary. "Our famous pianist." Lily blushed, unsure how to respond to this new dynamic. These people had known her for years as just another waitress, reliable but unremarkable. Now they were looking at her differently, and it felt strange. Doug emerged from his office, concern evident on his face. "You sure you want to work today? No one would blame you if you needed more time." "I'm sure," Lily replied firmly. "This is my job. I need normal right now." But normal wasn't possible anymore. Throughout her shift, customers kept asking for her autograph or trying to secretly take her picture. Some were supportive, telling her how moved they'd been by her story. Others seemed almost accusatory, asking why she was still here if she was such a great pianist. During her break, Lily escaped to the alley behind the diner, needing a moment of quiet. She found May, another waitress, already there. "Quite a week you're having," May commented, offering her a bottle of water. Lily accepted it gratefully. "That's one way to put it." "So what are you going to do?" May asked. "Are you leaving us for the bright lights of the concert world?" There was no jealousy in her question, just genuine curiosity. Lily had always liked May for her straightforwardness. "I don't know," Lily admitted. "Part of me feels like I should grab this chance. But another part is scared. What if I fail? What if I'm not as good as everyone suddenly thinks I am?" May considered this. "My grandmother used to say something about regret. She said there are two types: regretting something you did and regretting something you didn't do. The second kind sticks with you longer." It was simple wisdom, but it resonated with Lily. Wasn't that exactly what had happened with her music before? She had set it aside out of necessity, but had never stopped wondering what might have been. When she returned home that evening, Lily found a package waiting at her door. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound notebook with a note from Gregory Winters. "For new compositions. The world is waiting to hear what you'll create next." She traced her fingers over the blank pages, thinking about how her life had been like this notebook just a week ago, full of possibility but waiting for someone to notice, for something to happen. Her phone rang. Her piano student's mother calling to cancel the week's lesson. "We figured you'd be too busy with all your new opportunities," the woman explained. "We saw you're going to be on TV. We're all so proud." After hanging up, Lily realized that all 5 of her students had canceled for similar reasons. They assumed she would be moving on to bigger things. The thought left her feeling hollow. These children and their progress had been an important part of her life. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She paced her small apartment, making mental lists of pros and cons, trying to see a clear path forward. The fellowship would provide financial support, but was it enough to live on? The concert would be an amazing opportunity, but what if stage fright overwhelmed her after so many years away from performing? And what about the diner, the stability it represented? Around midnight, she found herself sitting at her upright piano again, not playing, but simply resting her hands on the keys that had been her constant companions through everything. This humble instrument had kept her connected to music when everything else had fallen away. She began to play softly, an improvisation that reflected her conflicted emotions, hope and fear, excitement and uncertainty. As the melody developed, something shifted inside her. The music wasn't asking her to choose between her two worlds. It was showing her a way to honor both parts of who she had become. By dawn, Lily had made her decision. She called Gregory Winters first, then Vivian at Good Morning America, and finally Doug at the diner. Each conversation was difficult in its own way, but with each one, her new path became clearer. On Thursday morning, millions of viewers tuned in to watch the Waitress pianist tell her story. Sitting at a piano in the local TV studio, dressed simply but elegantly, Lily spoke about her journey. The scholarship, her father's illness, the years of balancing work and music. She didn't present it as a tragedy, but as a detour that had shaped her in unexpected ways. Many people have asked if I regret leaving music school, she told the interviewer. The truth is, I never really left music. I just found a different way to keep it in my life. And now I'm finding a new path forward. When asked about her plans, Lily smiled. I'll be performing at the Symphony Hall next month. I've accepted a fellowship to support my return to professional music. But I'll also keep working at the diner part-time. The interviewer looked surprised. You're not giving up your waitress job? No, Lily said with certainty. That diner gave me stability when I needed it most. The people there are like family. And honestly, it keeps me grounded. Being a waitress taught me about connecting with people, about service, about finding dignity in all kinds of work. Those lessons make my music better. Then she played, not a classical piece as everyone expected, but an original composition she had worked on through the night. It wove together elements of classical structure with simpler, more accessible melodies. It was music that told her story, complexity and simplicity, struggle and beauty, existing side by side. As the final notes faded, Lily knew she had found her answer. She didn't have to choose between her worlds. She could build a bridge between them instead. 6 months had passed since Lily's life had changed overnight. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves as she walked the now familiar path to Symphony Hall for her afternoon practice session. She nodded to the security guard at the stage door, who greeted her by name, no longer a novelty but a regular presence in these hallowed halls. Big night tomorrow, he commented with a smile. The biggest, Lily agreed, butterflies already fluttering in her stomach. Tomorrow marked the culmination of months of work, her first solo recital at Symphony Hall. The Hidden Talents concert had been a tremendous success, leading to opportunities she couldn't have imagined just a year ago. The fellowship had provided not just financial support, but mentorship from established pianists who helped her rebuild her confidence as a performer. The practice room was empty, waiting for her. Lily set down her bag and took out the sheet music for her original composition, Two Lives in Harmony, which would be the centerpiece of tomorrow's performance. The piece had evolved over the months, growing more complex and nuanced as she refined it. Music critics who had heard early versions called it refreshingly accessible yet sophisticated, a description that pleased Lily, who wanted her music to reach people from all walks of life. After 3 hours of practice, focusing on the most challenging passages, Lily checked her watch. It was time for her shift at the diner. Many people had been confused by her decision to keep working as a waitress, even part-time. Her mother had been especially baffled. You're getting paid to play piano now, she had pointed out. Why would you keep serving coffee? But Doug had understood, offering her a flexible schedule, just 2 shifts a week, that allowed her to balance both worlds. The diner had changed too, embracing its connection to her story. A small sign now hung near the entrance, home of the piano waitress. Some customers came specifically hoping to see her, but most were regulars who had adjusted to her dual identity. Lily changed into her uniform in the Symphony Hall restroom. A bit of a strange juxtaposition that always made her smile, and walked the 10 minutes to Sunrise Diner. The afternoon rush was just beginning as she tied on her apron. There she is, called May from behind the counter. How's the practice going? Ready for tomorrow? As ready as I'll ever be, Lily replied, picking up a coffee pot and falling easily into the rhythm of the work. There was something comforting about the simplicity of these tasks after the intense concentration of her practice session. Her first table was a family with 2 young children. Clearly, tourists from the map spread across their table. The mother did a double take as Lily approached. Are you here? The piano waitress? She asked hesitantly. Lily nodded with a smile. What can I get for you folks today? The woman's eyes lit up. My daughter started piano lessons because of you. She watched your video and begged us to let her learn. The little girl, about 7 years old, looked up shyly. I can play Twinkle Twinkle now. Lily knelt down to the child's level. That's wonderful. You know, that's how all pianists start. One note at a time. Keep practicing. And someday you might play at Symphony Hall too. Throughout her shift, Lily found herself having similar conversations. A high school student who had been inspired to audition for music school. An elderly man who had dusted off his piano after decades of neglect. A middle-aged woman who had finally found the courage to perform at her church. These interactions had become one of the unexpected joys of maintaining her waitress job, the chance to connect with people who had been touched by her story in personal ways. These weren't sophisticated music critics or wealthy patrons of the arts, but ordinary people who found something in her journey that resonated with their own lives. As her shift ended, Doug called her into his office. Got something to show you, he said, pointing to his computer screen. Take a look. It was a local news article about tomorrow's concert, but with an unusual angle. Diner to host live streaming of Waitress pianist's debut recital. You're doing what? Lily asked, surprised. Doug grinned. We're setting up a big screen in the dining room. Closing to regular customers for the night and selling tickets instead, with your permission, of course. All proceeds will go to the music scholarship fund you started. 3 months earlier, Lily had used part of her earnings from performances to establish a small scholarship for service industry workers who wanted to pursue music education. She called it the Beyond the Apron Fund, a nod to the title of that first viral video that had changed everything. The event sold out in 2 hours, Doug added proudly. Mostly regulars who want to support you but can't afford Symphony Hall tickets. Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop by after your concert, Doug replied. These people are your biggest fans. They've watched this whole journey from the beginning. Later that evening, in her apartment, the same modest place she'd lived in before fame found her, Lily FaceTimed with her mother. Her parents had moved back to their hometown after her father's health improved, but they were flying in for tomorrow's concert. The symphony sent a car to take us from the airport to the hotel, her mother said, still sounding bewildered by such luxury. And your father is actually wearing his suit without complaining. Her father's face appeared in the frame. I'm proud of you, kiddo. Not just for the music, but for how you've handled everything. You've stayed true to yourself. His words meant more than all the glowing reviews and social media praise combined. Her father had always been a practical man who valued hard work and responsibility. His approval of her unconventional path forward was a validation she hadn't realized she still needed. After saying goodnight to her parents, Lily sat at her piano, still the same upright that had been her companion through the lean years. She could afford a better instrument now, but this one held too many memories to replace. She played softly, not practicing now, but simply playing for the joy of it, as she had done on countless nights before fame found her. The melody that emerged was gentle and reflective, a new composition taking shape organically as her fingers moved across the familiar keys. A knock at her door interrupted her playing. It was Mrs. Patterson, her elderly neighbor. I just wanted to wish you luck for tomorrow, the old woman said, handing her a small package wrapped in tissue paper, and to give you this. Inside was a delicate vintage brooch in the shape of a tiny piano. It was my grandmother's, Mrs. Patterson explained. She played for silent films back in the 1920s. I thought you might like to wear it. Tomorrow, a little piece of another woman who made her way in the world through music. The thoughtful gift was one more reminder of how Lily's story had created unexpected connections with people from all walks of life. The next morning brought the expected pre-performance jitters. Lily arrived at Symphony Hall early, needing time alone on stage before the audience arrived. The vast empty hall had a hushed, expectant quality, like a cathedral waiting for worship to begin. She sat at the concert grand, running through warm-up exercises, not yet playing her program but simply reacquainting herself with the instrument. The hall's perfect acoustics carried even these simple scales into the space with clarity and resonance. How does it feel? Gregory Winters asked, appearing from the wings. In the months since that first meeting, he had become both mentor and friend, guiding her re-entry into the classical music world with wisdom and patience. Terrifying, Lily admitted, but in a good way. "The hall is sold out," he told her. "And not just with our usual subscribers. Your story has brought in people who've never set foot in a classical concert before." That knowledge carried both pressure and purpose. Lily touched the piano brooch pinned to her concert dress, drawing strength from its connection to another woman's musical journey. Hours later, as she stood in the wings waiting to be introduced, Lily felt an unexpected calm settle over her. She had prepared for this moment her entire life, through different circumstances than she had once imagined, but she was ready. She thought of all the people who would be watching and listening tonight, the sophisticated music critics and wealthy patrons in the concert hall, the regular customers and co-workers gathered at the diner, her students and their parents, her own parents sitting in the front row, and countless others who had found inspiration in her unlikely journey. As she walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, Lily saw not just the audience before her but the constellation of experiences that had led to this moment. The years of training, the diner shifts, the late-night practice sessions, the viral video, the difficult choices, and all the people who had been part of her story. She took her seat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. The hall fell silent, that magical moment of anticipation before the first note. Lily began to play. Her first piece was Bach, technically precise, showing her classical training and discipline. Her second was Rachmaninoff, passionate and dramatic, a nod to the piece that had first captured public attention, but it was her original composition that formed the heart of the program. Two Lives in Harmony began simply, with a melody that evoked ordinary moments, the rhythm of everyday life. Working, serving, moving through the world, gradually it evolved into something more complex, with classical elements weaving through the straightforward theme, neither overwhelming the other but creating something new together. The piece built to a powerful middle section before returning to a transformed version of the opening melody, recognizable but deeper, richer for the journey it had taken. As the final notes faded into silence, there was a moment of complete stillness before the audience erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, some wiping away tears, others smiling broadly. Taking her bows, Lily felt a profound sense of wholeness. She had not had to choose between her worlds after all. Instead, she had found a way to bring them together, creating something unique in the process. Later that night, after the formal reception at Symphony Hall, Lily slipped away to visit the diner. Still in her concert dress, she entered to find the place transformed, tables pushed back, makeshift decorations everywhere, and a crowd of people who greeted her with cheers and applause just as enthusiastic as those at the concert hall. Doug presented her with a cake, decorated with a piano keyboard made of frosting. May hugged her tightly. Her students rushed to tell her their favorite parts of her performance. Standing there, surrounded by the people who had known her as just a waitress with a hidden talent, Lily realized that success hadn't meant leaving one life behind for another. Instead, it had meant expanding her definition of who she could be and what she could contribute to the world. She had moved beyond the apron not by abandoning it, but by showing what could exist alongside it: talent and hard work, artistry and service, the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary. As she cut the first slice of cake, someone called out, "Speech!" Lily shook her head, smiling. "I don't need to make a speech," she said. "I'd rather play for you instead." And in the corner of the diner, on the upright piano that Doug had purchased specially for these occasions, Lily played once more, not for critics or cameras or career advancement, but for the simple joy of sharing music with people she cared about. In that moment, both her worlds were in perfect harmony,